Welcome to this Epic Life podcast, where we explore the connection between building a conscious life and building a conscious team or a conscious business. We also break down 3 powerful permissions with our guests. These are the permission to chill, to be with what is, the permission to feel all the feels or embrace our full humanity, and finally, the permission to self-actualize, what we call permission to glow in the dark. I will be your host. My name is Christopher Carter. My friends call me KC. I'm a coach for founders and executives and meditation teacher for organizations. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my good friends. Let's meet this week's guest. Have you ever dreamed of writing a book? Do you just know there's one, or maybe more books floating around inside of you? What would publishing your book represent for you, your ideas, and your creativity? So far in my entrepreneurial journey, I found writing to be the core creative practice of designing and running my business. When we're not writing marketing copy, we're writing proposals, talks, or contracts. Cynthia Morrishas has coached so many creative people over the last 20 years to get back to the hard, focused work of finishing. What I love about her journey is that she has also practiced everything she coaches on. She helped me write and ship the Full Life Integration Manifesto, which created This Epic Life and my own coaching practice. Every time I start resisting my writing practice, I return to Cynthia Morrishas and her website, Original Impulse. Whenever I'm taking on long-term creative projects, she's the first person I call. Her processes for getting back into relationship with your projects have been refined over decades, and they work. We workshop some of these in today's conversation. In 2012, Cynthia launched her novel, Chasing Sylvia Beach, after writing it for 13 years through 17 full drafts. Celebrating her huge achievement is something I'll never forget. Since that time, I've watched her evolve into a highly prolific visual artist and hand lettering master. Her hand-drawn cards hang on the walls of our home, and she leads workshops in Paris teaching others how to capture the wow. In our conversation, we break down her 8th and brand new book, The Busy Woman's Guide to Writing a World-Changing Book. We also get into the impact of Cynthia's deep yoga practice. She has averaged 5 trips to the yoga studio per week over the last 23 years. We uncover the many correlations between a writing practice and meditation practice. This was a powerful discovery for us both because we probably met in this life to share those gifts with one another. Are you ready to be inspired to finish? Are you ready to celebrate publishing your next big creation? Cynthia Morrishas is going to coach us in getting there. This Epic Life presents author, artist, yogini, and writing coach, Cynthia Morrishas. Cynthia Morrishas, welcome to This Epic Life podcast.
What a joy and a pleasure to be here with you, Christopher Carter.
It's kind of surreal that you're here in person, and I get to look into your vast, deep blue eyes rather than talk over the phone or over Google Voice or whatever.
Right.
What are you doing here?
I came here for the GLP Refunion, the staff.
We created a word. Is it a refunion or a refunion?
Fun. Isn't it about fun?
It is about a
Yeah. You invited us here. You magnetized us. You tractor pulled us here, and we all came and conquered the pool.
I warned people that I would put out the love tractor beam and pull everybody's ass.
You did.
Whether they wanted to come or not to Akron, Ohio, and it's happened. It took a few years, but it happened. I'm so excited to get into your new book. I got a cop to something right out of the gate here. You know how sometimes when your friends send you the galley or the new copy of their book, it triggers something in you like, I need to finish my freaking book. Where's my book? Like, I want the joy. Like, a lot of us want the glory of having the finished book without a whole lot of the struggle and the mess that goes into it. And so from a place of acknowledgement, I got to witness your process last year writing it. So I was so happy for you to like lead your, walk your talk. And I was like, damn her, she's got her book done. Do you ever experience that with any of your fellow writers?
Yeah, well, when we have that envy, it's like, oh yeah, that means I want that. And I just hope that when people see me or anybody doing something that they want to do, that they're like, oh, here it is, proof, it's possible. If they can do it, I can do it.
Why don't we start with the 3 permissions, and then we'll get into your backstory a bit. On This Epic Life podcast, we explore 3 permissions: permission to chill, permission to feel all the feels or embrace your full humanity, and permission to glow in the dark. Which one of these, if any, resonate with you today, and how would you interpret those?
Oh, those are so good, Christopher, because I actually resonate with all three of them. And I want to talk about the permission to chill because here's my guilty secret. I run my own coaching business. I've been doing this
20
for
years, right?
20 years. This summer is my 20-year anniversary. 1999, I started out, had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
But I knew I loved coaching and I knew this was something I could do for life. So one of the great things about running your own business, or one of the reasons people get into their own business, is because they want to have the flexibility and the freedom to do what they want to do on their own terms. And so I have crafted that over the years. I work really hard, as you know. Like you, I'm from Ohio. We have that really strong work ethic.
Yep.
But I also have a lot of space. Like on the weekend, I don't like to schedule a lot. If I have things scheduled all the time, I get really cranky and resentful. So I've learned that I need space and time. So I kind of loaf around on the weekends. I give myself freedom to at least one day do whatever I want to do. And that usually involves, some errands or stuff around the house.
Did you loaf much this weekend?
I loafed the whole weekend. I looked at Steve, my husband, and I said, we did nothing today. And he said, that's vacation.
You choreographed and executed a synchronized swimming.
Actually, I did do some stuff. I was in 3 of the talent show acts.
We also did recreate, yet again, the dance scene from Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. Are you Romy or Michelle in that?
I don't know.
You kill it, whichever you are, you kill it.
Right.
Yeah, you were kind of.
The sexy prepositions. I did that act.
Oh yeah, you did all that. Yeah, so
that's right.
I didn't notice a whole lot of loafing actually.
The whole idea of permission to chill that I think is so important in your framework is we do need permission to chill, because I actually feel guilty that I have space, that it's a Tuesday afternoon and I'm taking a walk, I'm getting my 10,000 steps in, or I'm going to yoga. When I think about other people like working all the time, packed all the time, and I feel like, oh, I should be like that. And then I have to remind myself, no, this is my epic life. This is how I crafted it for myself so that I have space. Actually, it's really vital to the creative process. Having space to not be working on something, not be thinking, not be looking at a screen, to let ideas in. And this is one of the greatest things about my yoga practice. Yeah. It's not so much the yoga. I don't think it's just that space to be just in my body, in my breath, not doing anything work related. That's when all my good ideas come.
I met you through the Good Life Project Immersion, and we met each other on paper first when they sent out the Tribe book of pictures. And I knew from your sparkly face that there had to be some yoga or something happening, but I was kind of like, that's one of the ones I'm here to meet. You show up as writer, as coach of writers, as entrepreneur. And I think first and foremost, foundationally, I think of you as a yogini.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, right before this podcast started, you were kind of doing your moves over there, sitting down, opening up the body and stuff. But talk about your yoga practice as it's interwoven with 20 years of coaching and writing and everything else you do.
Yeah, that's a great question. The yoga I started 23 years ago. The boyfriend I had at the time was a yogi. And so I was like, well, he seems pretty chill. I'm going to pick this up. And I got Richard Hittleman's 28-day yoga.
All right.
Right. And I did it. So that was kind of the beginning of doing something for a month.
Was that on VHS?
No, it was a little paperback.
Okay.
And it was written for housewives in the 60s. And so there was a little bit of that
it's way back.
sprinkled in. I loved it. I did it. And then I remember going to yoga classes nearby, and I remember feeling that feeling after class and thinking, I want to do this all the time. And then I moved to Boulder in 2000 and had the fortune of practicing at Richard Freeman's yoga workshop for 8 years. And that was like the solid yoga practice, the real deal, the real foundational work that just kind of set me up for life. And I left Boulder and traveled around Europe for a year and then moved back to Denver, but always looking for other yoga studios where I could replicate that. I've never found that same level of integrity and depth, but it embedded it in me so that wherever I go, I have that foundation from the yoga workshop in Boulder.
Would you consider him your capital T teacher, like the main teacher of the practice, or is it many teachers for you?
No, I think it's probably more the people who were his teachers there. He's probably the closest person I've met, like, to what I would call enlightened.
Yeah.
And when I was all suspicious when I first went to his class, like, who is this Richard Freeman? And He came in and he has the most winning, humorous personality and calm vibe. And so that taught me a lot. Like, oh, humor. Like one day, this is the thing. Like one day Thursday morning, we're in class and he's like, you make your back straight or something like that. And he's like, make yourself useful. What are you doing here on a Thursday morning? Make yourselves useful. And it just cracked us up because he just had a way of bringing the integrity and the seriousness of the commitment to the practice, but also like we're human and you've got to laugh at yourselves. So that was a great lesson.
It's cool to hear that because I associate that a lot with you too. I think you and I bring that out in one another, that dynamism between gravitas and total irreverence. And I think it helps clients or people we work with, it helps the medicine go down when you give people permission to just be easy about it or to laugh at it. But you crack my shit up and then you'll bust my chops into doing something I don't want to do,
Yeah. Well, it's part of the permission to glow in the dark. If you have a sense of humor and it's one of your tools, it's one of your charms or the ways you operate. When I saw you, back to the GLP when we first met, when I saw you, I thought, this is the guy who's going to help me do my show, who's going to help me bring all of me, my humor, my earnestness, my connection to the divine and beauty. You are the one that was going to help me be fully me and have permission to use that. So it's true. It's happening.
Wow. Yeah, you gave me a phrase years ago describing my marketing, be who you are wherever you are. And what it's doing is it's becoming this magnet of those are the people I talk to on this show. And you're a great example of this. And also at the same time, you gave me feedback. I was still working in a corporate environment. And I wasn't used to just very direct feedback because nobody talks about anything there. You allowed me to kind of share my full life integration framework with you. And you're like, do you want some feedback? And I said, yeah, and I remember driving in my car and you just giving it straight up. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doing it all wrong. I suck. It totally triggered me. And then I thought, oh my God, this is a real coach. This is somebody who is not here to just like pat you on the back all the time, but wants and expects greatness from you.
That is so rare these days. I mean, I think that is a real benefit of having a coach and working with a coach is they will show you things that you don't see. And that's what I want. I don't want to know what I know. I want you to reflect things that I need to know.
So can I share the feedback you gave me? Because it's funny.
Yes, I'd love to hear it.
Basically, I was so enamored with the framework, soul, vitality, family, art, and work, full life integration, the lens, all this stuff. I laid out the components of the framework. And you were like, I nor anyone gives a shit about your framework. Just apply it, integrate my life, basically. It was just really cool. And to get that powerful insight so early on, I think was really formative for me. Just like cut to the... Tom Petty said, don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Nice. I like that.
You know what I mean? Like, don't walk through the elements, but just like, let's get to work and apply it. Thanks for that. Do you remember anything like that? Does that ring any bells?
I don't, but it's great to hear it back because that's kind of what I need. I'm working on a project now where to celebrate my 20-year anniversary of coaching people. And I thought, I'll share 20 things the creative person needs to be able to get their work done. I'll pontificate from this 20-year perspective. And then I realized, no, Morris, you don't get to pontificate. You have to tell stories and you have to tell your stories and share stories of my clients and myself and the things that we've gone through as we've made our way toward completing things because it's not easy. But it goes out into people's hearts through story. We don't want to just like connect through a mental framework. We want to we want to feel something. So it's great that feedback kind of bouncing back to me because I think we all need that.
So let's get into your new book because I freaking love it. I love how crisp and well designed it is. It's kind of like the Mark Twain quote, if I would have had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. It's just very pithy and applicable. There's not a lot of fat in here, I could tell. I consider myself a busy woman on my best days, so I will take the invitation. It's a busy woman's guide to writing a world-changing book. How did you come up with the title? What does the title mean to you?
Well, the people I work with, the clients I coach are busy women, and most of the people who hire me are hiring me to write a book. So these are the people I know really well. And I also coach men, and I've noticed there is a difference in terms of how we operate. There's a lot of similarities. It's not like we're a completely different species, but there's one client in particular that I was thinking of when I was writing this book, and she's super smart, super accomplished, executive level in her field and knows her stuff inside and out. And yet she would go through some of the things that I was kind of surprised that she would feel guilty about taking time away from her family and work.
Oh, yeah.
She would lose confidence in herself and her message, because writing a book is not easy. One of the hardest things is organizing the material. You have all of these things you want to say, and just how does it go together, and how do you do it? It's a hero's journey, a heroine's journey to make your way through your material and through yourself to write a book. So along the way, you go through all the feels. And so permission to have all the feels really shows up, because my problem with my clients is I see them as creative, resourceful, and whole. I see them as amazing. You're smart, you're accomplished, you know how to do things. Oh, and you feel and have challenges too.
And for them, their experience of themselves comes and goes like the
right.
wind. Yeah.
Right. So just another example from my own experience writing this book. I wrote it took one whole year to write it. And one day I would be like, this is great. This is going to be so good. So many people are going to get this and it's going to make a big difference. It is going to change the world. And then the next day it would be like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. This is not going to make sense. And who cares? And so caught on the red horns of dilemma like that, it was like, oh, okay, neither this is true nor that is true. I just need to just keep showing up and don't worry about what impact it's going to have, or is it good? So that is something I keep telling my clients, like, we're going to go through some mental or emotional process around it. Don't worry about it. Don't hang on to that. Just keep showing up and you will write the book.
Probably the most consistent theme when I ask a lot of authors I interview now about the process of writing is just shut up and get back to work.
Right. Don't mind trick yourself into grandiosity or, the bottom of the coal heap. Just keep showing up.
My coach always busts my chops for making things too significant, because I feel like we get hung up on precious prose versus just writing something to connect with people or writing something to get something done. We want it to be like some work of art. I was joking with him that I was going to rebrand my company This Significant Life because it's hard not to make everything so heavy and meaningful sometimes. And I think that slows us down, right?
Yeah, I remember one day realizing, like, oh, as a coach and a writer, I'm making meaning all the time. And it's a wonderful thing, because that's the part about being present and meaningful. And here's this moment. But there's a, shadow side to everything. So making things too meaningful, like, oh, he looked at me funny, and what does that mean? And what does it mean if I write this, or what does it mean? So it's one of those things that you have to both connect to and be non-attached.
So I want to move into kind of a mini workshop of this material, because I feel like this is so relevant and timely right now for so many people I'm working with, specifically people who do coach and do one-to-one work, and that type of toggle of energy or transition of energy from being all in service of the client to being in service of the thing you're writing. What would the practice be, or what were your practices around shifting gears between doing one-to-one work and then getting back to your book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just want to preface this by saying I wrote it for women, and it's completely applicable for men too. The men who have read it have said, this is great, I'm using it.
And also too, I got to benefit from a lot of these principles you've been developing over 20 years of coaching people to write their books. You helped me launch the manifesto 7 years ago, and a lot of the stuff has just been refined and deepened. But I remember that's why when I got it, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this is beautiful, and I'm going to call myself a busy woman from now on.
You can claim that. You can call yourself whatever you want.
Thank you.
So for me, you asked about transitioning into the writing mode, and everybody's going to be different. And that's one of the things that I made sure to put in the beginning of the book, that a lot of books will say, this is how you have to do it. You have to write every day. You have to do it this way. And as a coach, we know that everybody's different. Everybody needs to find their own way. So I reference my adopt and adapt approach. So adopt these ideas and adapt them to work for you. What works for me to get any writing done is leaving my office and going out to a cafe, or in the summer I go to the Botanic Gardens, usually for 2 hours, and I know exactly what I'm going to write. So I call this having an insertion point, where you know where you're going to go in, because when we don't know what we're going to write, I'm going to write my book, I don't know where I'm going to start. when you're in that space of indecision, there's a lot of room for all of those emotions to show up.
A lot of escape hatches are open.
And a lot of escape hatches are open.
Yeah.
I need to check email, or a lot of us think we have to get all this stuff done before we do our work. And what that does is it just diffuses our focus. Really, the biggest challenge now is focus management. It's really less about time. So if you're busy and you only have 15 minutes, your training is to develop your ability to drop in quickly and focus quickly. So the insertion point, knowing what you're going to write, helps that. So when I go to the cafe, I buy I call it my $5 focus fee. I get my coffee, and then I know where I'm going in. And I just feel kind of silly if I'm there checking email or doing anything else. So I'll dive into whatever I'm writing. I use free writing, which is just get the material out. Don't overthink it. Don't try to make it perfect. Perfectionism wins no awards. It's actually the hell realm in my mind. So
Hashtag hell realm.
Right. I'm a perfectionist. Like, I'm sorry. Let's help you with that, because it's not actually, it doesn't feel good and it doesn't work, because there is no such thing as perfect. Anyway, so free writing helps get past that perfectionism. And then I will just jam on the keyboard for 30, 40 minutes, and then I find my focus is gone. It's like, okay, I kind of done with that. I'll take a bathroom break, maybe get some water. That's when I'll maybe check and I'll play my online Scrabble, because that's my little fun thing. And then, okay, I'm done with that after 10 minutes, and then I dive back in and have another 30 or 40-minute session. And I've just found that over the years, I've been able to really just notice my own rhythm, my own tempo, how long I can focus, how when I need a break. So there's no battle. And this is the thing I really want for everybody. This is why I do what I do, is that we end the self battle about, oh, you should have written longer, or Cynthia Morrishas writes for 30 minutes, you should write for 30 minutes. Like, stop the battle, because the actual work itself is difficult enough. So I'm here to help remove all of the ways we make it more difficult. So I want everybody to know, like, and trust their own creative process. So I know what works for me. I trust that even if I didn't have a great writing day, I will write more tomorrow. And I actually like it. When I am done with my writing or whatever my creative practice is, I feel good. I feel my vitality, because I think that when we're creating, we tap into our vitality and we just generate more. I don't like to tell people when to do things or how to do things, but what I've noticed is when we do our creative work first, that generates a bunch of really great energy that we can use to get our tasks or errands done. Or we have energy to be with our people and do the other work. It's not the same on the flip side. If we get our busy work or tasks done, we're not like, I'm charged up now to write.
Yeah, right. Totally depleted and feeling overwhelmed.
Unfocused.
It's amazing the parallels that you just drew to a meditation practice, because I break it down, and meditation session is basically getting your own attention, holding and redirecting your attention, which is the bulk of it. That's the writing part. And then directing your attention, which is kind of the reward, the Scrabble, if you will. And that feeling of vitality you expressed, of putting your time in, paying yourself first. You get to walk away with this little investment in your soul bank account a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that's integrity. And that's what feels really good, because when you say, I'm going to write my book and I'm going to write these days, and when you break dates with yourself, you're really chipping away at self-trust. And you really feel that loss of integrity. And I don't know about anyone else, but I don't like that at all. Integrity is one of my core values, doing what I say I'm going to do. And I keep my word to myself as much as I can. I'm not perfect. I'm no angel, but in regards to doing my creative work and showing up for that, I've just trained myself, and I know how to do it.
That was a big part of when I opened the package. You wrote this really beautiful note to go inside it, and when I held the book, this power lightning bolt that hit me that I see in my clients sometimes is when they ship something, and it's kind of the vibe is, because I said I would. Like all year long, I was in your atelier program where we did focused writing together, and Cynthia teaches and coaches us all the way through. And I got about 40% through my book, and it was a huge win, definitely awesome ROI on the program. And to see you ship the final exam, the final thesis, I was like, oh, that's because I said I would.
Right. This is my ninja trick. It's not that I'm so great. It's not that I figured some things out about what works for me. It's not that I have any extra ability. It's because when I became a coach, I decided that I would coach writers and artists and creative people, and that because of integrity, I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. A couple of weeks ago, I challenged a client. He's like, oh, writing, and what am I going to write? And it's like, just post stuff on Instagram. You're already posting stuff. Just write a little more and don't overthink it, and do it for 30 days. So he said he would do it for 30 days. I said, okay, I'll do it too. So I've been doing it along with him. It's been great. It's been great for me. So I cannot coach creative people and not follow through on my own creative work. I literally can't.
Is that an Ohio thing? Is that an Ohio affliction?
Well, who would ever believe me if I were just sitting on the sidelines saying, oh yeah, I wrote one book 20 years ago or 13 years ago, so now I know how to do it and you should do it. I am in it. And even now, this new project, I'm back at square one. It is vulnerable. It is scary. It is calling on my creativity in ways that I have never done before. I need to have those creative challenges. I think that might be part of the Ohio and work ethic of we like a challenge.
What are some of the other differences you mentioned between your male clients and female clients in terms of shipping something like a book?
The guilt is one that comes up a lot.
Yeah, Ani brought that up. We talked about her referencing that. She just finished that book and just that feeling guilty about making people wait, kids, spouse, whoever.
Yeah, and so of course everybody's different, and making generalizations is always teetering on a dangerous ledge, because there may be truth in that and there may be not truth in that. But what I've seen for women is we're very relationship oriented, and our relationships are really important to us, same as men. What's different with women is any kind of boundary keeping or saying no or taking care of ourselves. We perceive that, we feel that as a rupture of the relationship. That if I say, no, I can't do that for you, that the other person's going to be upset with me, and that's going to erode the relationship. And I don't know that men have that much sense of like, oh, I can't let somebody down. The instinct of caring for everybody, being head of household, being a mother and running the household and raising the children, that's the primary job. That is the number one job.
Because it's almost instinctual,
it's
too.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number one job. So everything else is after that. So anything else that comes after that has to be in relationship with that number one job. So I think that is something that women, especially mothers, are always toggling, those multiple relationships. That's the biggest one. The other thing I've noticed is often women have a harder time taking up space and taking up space for themselves and taking a stand and saying, I have something to say without apology. This is my stand. And back to Ani DeFranco, she was my shiro in my 20s and absolutely helped me to learn how to take up space, to learn how to have a voice, to learn how to take a stand. One of the things I believe is we need these role models. So seeing other women do it, seeing other people who are like us do what we want to do is huge.
We're going to shift gears for a second, and let's talk about the song Don't Stop Believing by Journey and what I witnessed looking down into our lower level of our split level home. What were you doing with the children the other day?
Oh, I was hypnotizing them.
You were becoming the favorite. Very, like you were waging a hard campaign, and I was starting to get jealous. What's that energy? What's the source of that energy? What comes up for you when you're doing that?
It was Frankie and Olive, and they were working on their routine for the talent show. They were singing Don't Stop Believing. And when I was about their age, I was home alone after school, and I would put on an album.
Oh my God, me too.
And I would do my interpretive dance. I would do, like, you remember the glam rock, and it starts off really like slow, and then it builds into this like long frenzy. So I'd be crouched on the floor, and then I'd rise up, and so I love to dance.
It's essentially what you were doing. That's ecstatic dance, that arc.
Yeah, ecstatic, interpretive, freak dance, whatever we call it.
You always remind me of Ali Sheedy in The Breakfast Club. Those are your moves. Like the go down to the floor where your shoulders touch the floor, and like that whole...
It feels good. I love to dance. And the yoga, I remember when I was practicing yoga. Once I moved to Boulder and went to the yoga workshop, it was every day, sometimes twice.
Right. I know. You have practiced consistently. If you had to average out like times per week over the years, I mean, what would you say?
5 days a week.
That's a serious body practice, and it's a serious body, mind, and soul practice.
Right. Once when I lived in Portugal, I went to the yoga studio and I was like, can I come here? And he's like, sure. And I remember being in class, not understanding anything. I was the village idiot and just looking around, looking for body cues. And then at one point during the class, the teacher stopped the class and kept me in the pose and came over and was talking about me in this pose. And I'm like, I have no idea what he's saying. And it went on for a really long time. And at one point I was about to burst out and say, I have no idea what you're saying. And I'm like, it's either really good or really bad. But I bring that story up because it's just wherever I go, I try to find a place to practice. But the dancing is so great now as I get older because the yoga has given me all this strength and flexibility. And
you were really working the Pete Townsend windmill arms, and the kids were just mesmerized. They're really bad with names. So they're like, the woman with the fluffy curly red hair, she told me this and this and this. I'm like, Cynthia Morrishas. Yeah, I get it. But it was the energy. And I've also been part of feeding that fire too, because there was moments in Costa Rica, I recall, and at camp where if I bust my guitar out, I could be like a snake charmer and you're like a cobra who just wants to boogie for like 3 or 4 hours straight.
Right. You have helped give me that permission to glow in the dark. And I figure I don't have children of my own, so I figure that any time I win children over is a day well earned.
I just appreciate that dynamism that you bring to it. This work is pretty serious, right? Like you're in serious conversations, if not with clients, with yourself a good chunk of the week.
I notice that I am sometimes a little too earnest. So like really wanting to get my point across, or this means a lot. I really want this for people. And so the humor and being in the body, it's absolutely vital. And that's what it's in the book. It's something I teach. It's something I bring up in the atelier at the beginning of the year. What is your physical practice? Mm-hmm. If you don't have a physical practice, you're going to suffer more. So whatever that is, whatever that looks like, have that being in your body.
I definitely think there's something about, I talked to Amelia a little while before this, and the practice of moving your prana around, moving your energy around, it kind of gives you something to start with and to focus when you sit down to create whatever.
Yeah, before you came in, I was doing my my hip grinding dancing, and I was thinking, this is me stirring up my chi, getting ready.
So let's talk about the difference between starting and finishing a book, because you had a pretty legendary experience with your novel that you released 7 years ago. Chasing Sylvia Beach.
Yeah, it took 12 years to write and then a year to publish.
Wow.
And it was about, it's called Chasing Sylvia Beach, and it's about an American heroine named Sylvia Beach who moved to Paris in 1919 and opened the first English lending library and bookshop, Shakespeare and Company. And I just thought her life was great. I wanted to be like her, and so I wrote performances, monologues, plays about her, and then committed to a novel in 1999. One of the things that kept me going, I had no idea how to write a novel. Why would I? Why would anyone? Unless you do it. There's only one way to figure it out, right? There's a lot of humility in draft after draft. It was 17 drafts.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of support, getting feedback, hiring editors to give me pages and pages of feedback, which I took as a master class in novel writing. Sylvia Beach helped me do it. It was really about her. I wanted the world to know about her because, again, having role models to do life your way was important to me. So that was the thing that helped me stay with it. And then being a writing coach, I'm like, I can't say, oh yeah, I almost finished a novel and be able in any way to help anybody finish anything. If I don't go the mile, I don't know what it takes. I can't help other people do that. I've written other books. This is my 8th one.
Would you say, in terms of the format of a book, is the novel the most complex or nuanced or hardest? Or is there a harder format?
I think it's mostly really just about the individual writer and what they are called to write or what they enjoy writing. After all of that, and after I finish the novel and I set it up for a sequel, and people are like, oh, when's the next one coming out? Like,
let's do the math. No, I'm just kidding.
When someone pays me a lot of money, that's when. I realized, it took me a little while afterward to realize, I don't think the novel is my form. I don't think I'm naturally a novelist. That was a realization. It was kind of like, okay, there's that. I did one. I don't have to do another.
1999 seems like a pretty formative year for you, Coach, kicking off that book. The yoga was kind of coming online. Well, maybe a couple years before that. What did you learn about finishing over those 12 years?
It's really true what you hear, that the last 10, 15, 20% is so difficult. It's just excruciating. And I developed a visual for this. So you asked about starting versus finishing. If you think of a funnel, and at the top of a funnel, it's really wide and there's a lot of space. And up in this funnel, if we think about our creative ideas floating around, there's a lot of possibility. And as creative people, we love possibility in our imagination.
Get drunk on it.
Yes, that's wonderful. So if you commit to a project, you start to move your way down the funnel. And the cup of the funnel gets more and more narrow. And as it gets more and more narrow, your limitations arrive and you're presented with them. And what do you do with your lack of skill, lack of talent, inability to focus?
So there's nowhere to hide at some point.
Right. And so the closer you get down to the tube of the funnel, suddenly other ideas come up. And like, ooh, I'm going to pop back up to this possibility because up here, I am limitless. I am free. I can do anything.
I have power, access to my power.
I don't have to face the fact that I don't know how to write a good sentence, or I don't know how to, like, the thing I'm like, how do I bring humor in? How do I bring voice?
Or I can't finish these final edits for my publisher or whatever it is.
Or somebody
like the
gave
not
me
fun stuff.
The grit of it, the craft. And this is true for any art form. You get into the deep work of the craft. And so when you get down in the tube of the funnel, that's really painful because there's no way out. And you just have to keep going to finish because and it's happening with me. I'm noticing that I'm working on this writing project and I'm thinking about, I'm going to lead another workshop in France next September and start because it's far away.
Yeah.
So projects
creates space. It creates eye distance to see.
It's fun. Projects in the distance are so much more fun than the grunt work of learning how to be a better writer or learning how to be a better performer. So what I'm always asking my clients is what helps you through those moments and what is to love about this part of the process. So for me, loving seeing a piece of writing come together. I'm sculpting it, I'm crafting it, I'm seeing connections that I didn't know were there. And this is one of the big things about writing that I want everybody to know, that it doesn't happen in our minds. It doesn't happen before we sit down to write. And this is one of the biggest things people think, I'm going to have it all figured out and then I'm going to take dictation from my big, brilliant brain. That's not how it happens. Everybody, you go in to write and then you're like, oh, I didn't know I had that to say, or oh, I see how this is connecting in, or oh, now the story's actually got a bigger tenor, a bigger flavor than I thought.
So that only arrives by showing up and showing up consistently.
Right. And I don't know whether this is God or the divine or whatever you call it, but there's the mystery of where our ideas come from. And when you think that you're the one just taking dictation and knowing it, you're really missing out on that partnership of letting the ideas come to their fuller.
Again, the parallels to the meditation practice it's really profound. It's like, as Yogananda would say, making time to be with God or to be with the muse in your case, or whatever that thing is that sorts and sifts and crafts. It's kind of like the most important work that we want to be a slippery fish and not show up for or to get out of. Do you find it's hard for people to be with that creative, connection to something bigger than themselves?
I think we get lost in the mechanics. We think it's about the mechanics of how we set up our writing practice. I think we don't trust ourselves yet. We don't feel that connection yet. We don't know that until we get into it and start feeling it and experiencing it. So this has happened to everybody I've seen writing a book. The book will totally change form. It will this wasn't the book I set out to write last year. I was going to write that other one. Yeah. And then no, this is the one that needs to be written. This is the one your
clients need. Yeah.
This is the one the world needs more now. To your question, I think it's that we feel vulnerable and we don't like not knowing. We don't like being out of control. So a lot of the creative process and meditation is being out of control. But here's what we want. I think people are always asking tell me about your process, because the creative zone and the meditation zone is that magic place of flow where we're out of time and we're immersed in a moment, we're immersed in what we're doing, and it feels so good. It's so nourishing to our nervous systems because we're not, trying to, do all these things at once like we're doing now. Our attention isn't scattered in this kaleidoscope. It's kind of unified in one kind of shining light. And that is the feeling that we want and we crave and we seek. And I have found that in the creative process. I have found that in meditation. I found that in yoga when we surrender to the structure.
I call it the prism. Like with a prism and light going through it, it creates from a focused refraction of light to just a mirror ball of light spreading around. You've always struck me as like an incredibly focused, disciplined person. What part does yoga play in that for you?
It just gives me a deeper relationship to my body than I ever had. And that grounding in the body gives me so much confidence and strength. I remember when I was at the yoga workshop and they're like, you're probably going to be here first for the physical and to kind of get in shape or feel good in your body. And then
Get the glutes.
And then the spiritual stuff will come. I feel like just to have that out of time, out of space, like in this other space and in the community with other people doing that. I just love seeing people showing up and rolling out their mats and surrendering. I think it's a surrender. The writing is a surrender. The meditation is a surrender. Any of the practices are. So that you create the container so you can surrender and know you're safe to be in there and see what shows up.
One of my favorite stories of the last 7 years of anyone, let alone you, is how you discovered your husband. It's like the book, The Alchemist. You know what I'm saying? What do I mean by that?
Oh my God. I was single for 7 long, lonely years and really just wanting to meet my husband, doing all the things everybody tells you to do. And I'm working at home and I go 3 places. I go to the post office, the grocery store, and the yoga studio. And I'm like, I'm not going to find him at yoga. It's just me and a bunch of yoga twigs. Like, that's not going to happen. And then one day I was in class, rolled down my mat next to this guy, and the teacher said, does anybody have any injuries? And I said, oh, I've got this thing. And so after class, he leaned over and said, oh, what's the deal with the injury? Or he just initiated a conversation. And I went home and I said, I had a PME, a positive male experience, because that's what I was collecting.
Oh, wow.
I just want to have like positive male experiences. Mm-hmm. It's completely possible. I'm like, I have no idea what he looked like. He was backlit, so I have no idea what he would look like. But that was the beginning of practicing next to him every day for the better part of a year. And we'd have all these micro conversations before class. And then as his birthday rolled around, I said, oh, let me take you for coffee. And then we started taking walks together and commuting to yoga together. And we still go to yoga together. I love him. I love that's how we met because it was completely unexpected. I would never have swiped yes on him if I'd seen him on an app.
It's really amusing me right now because it reminds me of your funnel framework where as the parameters were starting to get formed and it was like becoming time to either, commitment or go further down the path. I remember you second guessing and wondering if this was the right fit or if this was something you were just finding convenient. And I met you at the peak of that "where's my man" thing. That was like the mantra. And I remember thinking, oh, this is a law of attraction thing, kind of, because the more we say "where's my whatever," we kind of subconsciously hold it separate than. And I love that he was square in the center of the target of something you love to do, that you've devoted so much of your life to doing, practicing yoga. And here's this guy who's just in it for the same reasons, doing the same thing. And you guys end up getting married. Just awesome.
Well, I remember finally adopting a perspective of, it's one person. It's a real person. He's out there. He's on his way and he's getting ready too. And so before we got married, we had an astrology reading, and because we both came to the yoga studio the same month. And the astrologer was like, you would not have been together if you'd met before. You just wouldn't have seen each other. You came into each other's lives right in the marriage chart or the marriage something, I don't know, of the chart. And so timing really is everything. I could not have controlled that. I did have to surrender. It was the best year of my life, that 2015. I was glowing in the dark and the light, and as people say, like, do you and be the best you.
Right, you were on fire that year.
It was a great year, 2015. Yeah. So the one thing I want to say about Steve, I think this pertains to life in general and the creative process is all my stupid bullshit about what he should be or look like or showed up. And I had to just drop it. I had to let it go. And thank goodness I have good friends who were like, no, that, you know what that thing is not important.
Accept the gift.
Like, he's a great guy. I'm like, he is a great guy. So
he felt so touched to be here as part of our larger Good Life Project family. It was pretty cool. I like that dude. Solid dude.
I like him too.
As we come full circle here, we played this game called Isms. And isms are pithy little offerings we would offer an aspiring somebody who wants to create something. You can't get this wrong. You can't screw it up. And these will be called Morrisisms. It's a lot of S's, Morrisisms. I think we have to start with, what's one piece of advice you would offer an aspiring author who just needs to start?
Don't overthink it. The mistake a lot of people make is thinking they have to have the whole thing outlined, and then they'll spend all that time in planning mode. Get just enough to get started and let the book lead you.
What's a piece of advice or a tip you would offer an aspiring author who just needs to finish, to clock in and finish?
Don't give up. Find help or find the joy in the finishing part of the process, and trust that your book needs to be written. Your book, the great thing about a book is once it's written, it's outside you. It's got its own life. It's doing its own thing. So your job is just to stay with it and trust it and shepherd it out.
Yeah, while you were talking about finishing earlier, it reminded me of, I painted houses, interiors and exteriors through college. And I remember the difference in disposition between the framing carpenters and the finishing carpenters. Like, the finishing carpenters are artisans, they're hanging like crown molding. It's super expensive. You can mess it up and, there's hell to pay. And just their patience and demeanor, and there's just like loving the craft. I found those typically men to be much more joyful, to clock in for that craft without all the resistance. But thanks for the reminder. It's hard ass work, but it's also a beautiful thing. It's a privilege.
And if you're writing a book, there's something about writing or something about the subject that you love. So find that and plug into that, and that will help float you through the insecurities or the challenges.
What would you offer an aspiring spouse who is tired of being single, looking for the right fit?
All of the stuff people say is true. Be yourself, and the minute you let go, that person shows up. All that stuff that I hated. The biggest thing I would say is there's nothing wrong with you. It's not because there's something wrong with you. You just haven't found your person.
What would you offer a busy woman who knows that there's a book inside of her somewhere and has so many obligations, so many kids and colleagues and people in her face for her time?
Make space. Timing really is everything, and you might not have the space for it now. And it's not just like, just squeeze it in. Like, you can't really force or crowbar it, but when your life starts opening up and you have space, maybe now the kids are all in school and you do have that time. So make the space when the space makes itself available. Don't keep putting it off.
What's at stake for the people that are on the fence of whether or not to show up and finish their world-changing book?
Well, it goes back to that integrity. And there's a chapter in this book called Writing a Book is Soul Work. And I do believe it's not just like, I'm going to crank this out in a weekend. And it's like, it really calls you forth. It calls you to take a stand and connect to what you really care about and want for the world. So that to me is deep work. The reason I like to help people and the reason I want to help people in this way, our gifts are here to be used and expressed. And when we don't, they're just a burden, and they feel heavy, and we feel guilty, and we feel shame, and all the shadow side of our creativity. And the world doesn't need more of that. We need more of us feeling our vitality, feeling our confidence, feeling our power of, yes, I am here to have something to say. This is my message and I want to share it. We need all of us moving toward the light and the vitality of that, and not living in the shadow of not doing what we know is true for us.
So as we wrap, I got to finish with a little bit of acknowledgement. Are you open to some acknowledgement?
Lay it on me.
Can we hold hands, since we have this gift of being together physically present? Thank you for, in your very funny words years ago, for putting my balls in a vice to make me ship the manifesto.
Because I can't believe you just revealed my number one master level coaching skill. The threat.
You created this unstoppable accountability vice that included my testicles, and it forced shipping the manifesto, which created my coaching practice, which created this epic life, which created the framework which I live by. You were a massive part of that. Also, similar to Steve on the yoga mat next to you, you are the force of nature in the writing world that is the not so secret weapon to people shipping their stuff. And I had to reawaken to just your powerful influence over me getting my book done. So when it gets done and I show up on a motorcycle on my book tour in Colorado, just know that you are a huge part of that.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. It's an honor and a gift to be part of it. I love what I do, and I love helping people like you shine their light and bring their message out even more.
I love you, sister.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to find out more about this epic circle, our premium mastermind and Costa Rica retreat experience for founders, executives, and high potential leaders, please reach out to us through thisepiclife.com or on Facebook Messenger. Just look for This Epic Life. And until next week, glow in the dark.